So I'm pretty lucky, I would say. I didn't really date a lot. I went on a date and then I ended up marrying that girl. So I don't know. I don't know a lot about dating. Um, it's worked out pretty well, I would say. The result was a lot of girls. It's a lot of little girls, a lot of little girls in the house. I don't know if you want more girls in the house, but a few of them are getting a little older, and I'm a little worried. I'm just level straight away with you because I don't know. I don't know what dating is like. All I know is what I see on TV and what I like. It looks like a mess. If I'm just being totally honest, it looks like kind of a nightmare out there. And I like to listen to this. There's a Seattle radio show called Brook and Jubal in the morning. I don't anybody? No, why would you? Because we're not in Seattle. Okay, there we go. So you know where this is going probably. So they do a segment called the Second Date Update. It's incredible. It is. I cannot stress to you how good it is. If you're feeling sad, you're feeling like you're a mess, listen to that. You're gonna feel so much better immediately. It's how it goes. Basically, it's how it goes. They take requests from their listeners and they're like, hey, if you went on a date, first date, and now you're getting stood up, you're not getting a call back from the people, then hey, let us know. We'll call them. We'll figure out what happened. So they email them and they talk to them, and then it's like, I don't know. I did such a great job. She was great. I had a good time. Like, what happened? And so they call and they're like, hey, Aubrey, you went on a date with Austin, and he says you're not calling him back. Like, what? We just want to know what he did wrong so he can get better. And they're always like resisting at first, like, oh, it's fine. And then the weirdest stuff in the world comes out. Like he opened a sketchbook and he was like, can I sketch you? But he already had sketches of me. Like, what's happened? Or whatever. It doesn't matter. At least you should listen to it. That's not a made up one. That's a real one. There's one that was like, I'm pretty sure he was wearing women's perfume. And yeah, it's crazy. It's a mess, like I said. Dating seems like just an absolute cluster right now. The best part, though, is like halfway through the call, after they've gotten all the information of like what went wrong. Like, by the way, Austin's on the other line, and he would like to talk to you. It's like, what? Oh my gosh! And then it's full-scale chaos. It's like, I didn't know you pick up on the women perfume. It was a one-time thing. I didn't have enough. Anyway, it is amazing. It is amazing. But the underlying theme that I've seen, and I've listened to hundreds, for sure, hundreds of these. And the underlying theme is you're making snap judgments about what you want, right? You are approaching that relationship, especially that first date relationship, as a consumer. You're shopping, almost like you're at the store. You're looking like, what do I want out of this? And yeah, it spirals because of that, right? So I thought what we'd do today for the next little while is just kind of look at relationships, how they work, and how the actions that we choose and how we go into relationships sets a precedent for how that relationship is going to unfold over time. And just to kind of, we're not going to talk about these these in depth, but it is very normal. I just want to point out, like the Old Testament, we're going to talk Old Testament, we're going to talk a little New Testament, but the Old Testament is amazing. I say this every time I'm up here because I talk about the Old Testament every single time I'm up here. The Old Testament is phenomenal because the New Testament is very anecdotal. It's very prescriptive in it. Like, hey, this is how you should live. This is maybe how to think about things. This is how to conduct yourself, right? The Old Testament is like, hey, here's some pretty fallen people who make both amazing decisions and catastrophic ones. But again, just to kind of humanize this a little bit, tied into the word, right? Like I was just paralleling how dating can be a disaster. I think we see that with some of the patriarchs or the heroes of the faith, because again, they're told something, but then they go about how to figure that out. Like if you believe, like, hey, you're meant to be married, great. There's an approach there. Am I going to wait on God to give me that spouse? Or am I going to go, he said I'm getting married, I better hop on all these sites and I better, force the issue. And it's in our nature to force the issue. So, I mean, just a couple examples, like Abraham and Sarah, right? Like pretty high-level figures in the Bible. Couple back-to-back examples. Abraham and Sarah go down to Egypt. There's a famine, and they go down to Egypt. And Abraham, again, like the father Abraham that everybody's heard about, is like, Sarah, listen, tell him you're my sister, because I don't want to get killed. So just it's fine. Just tell him you're my sister. And it goes poorly. Of course, they get kicked out of Egypt. It's not received well. And then just a couple chapters after that, God has since promised Abraham a son, and he's looking at it through his understanding, right? His understanding, okay, we'll have a son. Well, I don't know if you know this, God, but my wife can't have a child. And so he tells Sarah, and Sarah's like, well, the only logical conclusion is you need to go You know what I mean? You go, Hagar, should go marry her, have a kid with her, right? That is us applying our understanding of how things would have to happen to a prescription or to a promise of God. And you're gonna see that throughout. So, it's gonna be real easy to see yourself in the story. At least it was easy for me to see myself in all these stories. So, let's hop into 1 Samuel. It's good. I don't do slides, by the way. It's old school. So, you're gonna want to fact check all this. That's actually the real test. That's what I really like to do. If I put it up here, I feel like you guys, as I'm talking, you're like, I don't know if that's right. Good. Go read it. That's right. Go read it yourself. So the way this is going to work, we're going to look at three main characters in 1 Samuel. And we're going to jump back and forth and kind of diagnose how they're doing with their relationships and their decision-making and where they fall. Are they understanding? Do they have faith? Do they have understanding and faith? So the three characters, we're going to hop back and forth again. So it's kind of between like 13 and 20-ish, but we're going to hop around. So try and hang in there with me. But it would be great if you go back and read it all, because it's a pretty good story. So, 1 Samuel. Context, Israel wants a king. That's pretty much it. They had judges leading up to this, and now they've decided they want a king. So Samuel, the prophet, who's actually, obviously the book is named after, but that's not who we're talking about today. He goes about the process of finding a king for Israel. And so the first person he finds is King Saul. So King Saul is found. And it says in 1 Samuel 9:2, and he had a son whose name was Saul, a handsome young man. There was not a man among the people of Israel more handsome than he. From his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of his people. So handsome and tall. It's a good combo, so I hear. I don't know anything about that. Just kidding. I don't. That's probably not something to say from the front. I'm getting older now, so it's part of life. So anyway, if you were dating, right? If you were like on a second date update, or you were like on a blind date with Saul, you were probably pretty excited, I would imagine. Like you go home, you call your friend, you would not believe he's so tall and handsome, he's smart, he comes from the tribe, like he's great. You're probably like committed to that path. I'm gonna marry Saul, let's see how this shakes out. However, for those who have read ahead or know the story, Saul was not great. And so there's a lot of examples. The one we're going to touch on is 1 Samuel 13. And so it reads this. A little context. Samuel prescribed Saul how to act in a time of stress or concern for Israel as they were fighting the Philistines. So 1 Samuel 13:8. He, as in Saul, waited 7 days, the time appointed by Samuel. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, bring the burnt offering here to me, and the peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. As soon as he had finished the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him and greet him. Samuel said, what have you done? And Saul said, when I saw that the people were scattering from me, and that you did not come within the days appointed, and that the Philistines had mustered at Michmash, I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering. And Samuel said to Saul, you have done foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, with which he commanded you. For then the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought a man after his own heart, and the Lord has commanded him to be prince over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. So again, it's easy, and you'll see this in a couple examples, but Saul was told to do something, and he just simply did not do it. He applied his own understanding of how that needed to happen to the situation. And that is rebellion, essentially. That he understood the order, potentially. Like he understood he needed to make an offering to God, but he did not have faith in God to deliver that, right? And I mean, I can't imagine what that must be like. You're waiting, right? He did wait 7 days, right? And then as soon as you do the burnt offering, suddenly here comes Samuel. I mean, imagine that panic. Like right after you do something you weren't supposed to do at home, and you hear that car pull up, like mom's home. This is going to go well. You either followed the instructions or you didn't. And Saul turned out to just be a king who did not follow instructions. He was zealous. He made up rules. He did things that he thought were what what was prescribed in the situation based on his own understanding. There's another example. Again, this is all kind of weaved together. We'll see how this shakes out. It might get confusing. But so Saul, in this same kind of deal, so they're battling with the Philistines. He makes this prescription that nobody should eat until evening after victory is given to Israel. That's his reaction. Nobody asked him to do that. God didn't say to do that. God did not say to order a fast among the people. That's just him applying his own desire, his own ambition to a situation without really consulting or considering, how does faith apply here? How can God work here? And so let's contrast that with David. So David is the second king, of course, of Israel. David's a wild character. I feel like David gets a bad rap, you know what I mean? A little bit. Rightfully so. But he also did a lot of good stuff. So everybody, King David, you think of like one time, Bathsheba, you know what I mean? Like, it's bad. I'm not making an excuse for that. But like David did a lot of good stuff throughout. Like David is one of the most written about people in the entire Bible. And it starts early. Like his young age he shows incredible patience, wisdom, perseverance, and faith in God throughout his entire time. So in 1 Samuel 17, we're jumping ahead to a story you might have heard of, David and Goliath. A lot happens again. A lot happened between where I just left off with Saul. So when Saul loses the blessing of the Lord there, a lot happens in those 4 chapters up until this point. But we're going to fast forward just to kind of contrast how David approaches a situation when he's faced with opposition and how to handle that in the favor of the Lord. So 1 Samuel 17, 10, and the Philistine said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all of Israel heard the words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. This is an important point here. So at this point, David and Goliath, David's actually already been anointed king. So the blessing has left Saul. David has already been anointed, which is interesting. Like if this happened, you just put yourself in this situation. If you were David and you were anointed king, and you kind of walk into a situation where there's an army assembled, and you're just, you're looking out across at them, they're looking back at you, you're wondering how this is going to unfold, and you're looking around and you're seeing people just kind of hiding their tents, everybody's being, I don't say scared, potentially would be a good word. It would be very easy to be like, you know what, I got this. I don't know if you know this, I've already been anointed, you're actually driving my car, I'm gonna need the keys real quick. I am actually the king, you're just occupying my throne for a while. But at no point does he do that. His entire concern is what Goliath just said right now, which was essentially defying Israel, defying God. His approach, and as this is now David, we're jumping down, so this is still 1 Samuel 17:36. David says, your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. The contrast is very clear there. Like, again, he could take this so many different ways, but what he chooses to do is be occupied with, this Philistine thinks that he can stand up to the one true living God. That's what he thinks. Like, we'll get to everything else later. That's not a priority. Like, my kingship, my appointing, my whatever, that is not a priority right now. What the priority is this man standing here saying he and his people are greater than the living God. I'm just consumed with that. And that's a very different approach than I think what we see from Saul in 1 Samuel. He's just not forcing his timing. He's demonstrating both understanding that this cannot stand, that God has promised his people, that God has a path for his people. But more than anything, he's demonstrating faith. Faith, God has delivered me before, God will deliver me again. Quick pause here. Quick caveat, because this is going to weave in too. This is like the question, this has become common lately. We've talked about this a lot, like faith versus fear. Have you heard that? A lot of people say that. I think, it's a great point, and it's been around forever, right? And the best example I could think of is like COVID, right? COVID, and I'm not criticizing anybody's perspective during COVID. COVID was a crazy, crazy time. A lot of information. Nobody knew the right answer. But I think in times like that, when it's pure chaos, and let's go back for a second, because we're on this side of COVID, it's very easy to forget how chaotic and how real it was. So March of 2020 was insane. If you don't remember, it was insane. The stock market was off 35%. People were actually the 2 weeks to flatten the curve hadn't started yet. That was late March. It was just chaos. You're hearing stories from Wuhan, China. You're hearing stories from northern Italy, some stories in New York. And it sounds like apocalyptic. It sounds horrible. Supply chains are screeched to nothing. Like you go to H-E-B, you can't, there's like only 10 people allowed in the store at one time. And you go in and all you do is you look at empty shelves. Like it was apocalyptic. It was very concerning. And that fear stepped into our lives. And it just becomes overwhelming and distracting because you're a human being, of course. So you're sitting there thinking like, man, how is this gonna shake out? What do I need to do to find toilet paper? Like, or whatever, you know? And then we moved on, we forgot. But in that moment, it was so chaotic. And at first, it was just survival. But then it started to spread into like, we can't meet at church. We can't do this. We can't do that. And again, policy is very hard to make. It's very hard to make those decisions. I'm not criticizing leadership per se. But I think in that moment, there was a learning opportunity for all of us to figure out where our chips were on the table. Were we down for what God was doing? Or were we going into flight mode? Were we fight or flight? Were we fighting for the Lord? Or are we flighting? And so that faith versus fear is very common here, and I think you see that with Saul. It's kind of a flight, it's kind of a wait, let's see, you know. And with David, it's a fight, right? That's how he answers the bell. The main character that I'd like to leave you with today, and I would encourage you to read up on this man a little bit more. You've certainly heard the name. There's not a lot written about him, but he is a compelling character. Very interesting guy, because he's kind of nestled and woven throughout this story as a minor figure, but maybe best supporting actor, if you will. There's Oscars back then. But Jonathan is in a conundrum, I would say. He is the son of Saul, and he turns out to be kind of the best friend of David, which we'll get to in a second. But can you imagine that situation, right? Like you grew up. I think he was born. He was alive already when his dad had become king. But just imagine if you are the son of a king. Guess what you're thinking? Like, you're a human being. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, you're lining up. You're calling your shot, man. Like, when I'm king, have you seen The Lion King? He sings a song about it. Like, I can't wait to be king. Like, that's a natural thing, probably, that Jonathan might be feeling. But let's parallel. So we walk through. Let's just again recap. So Saul's reaction to God was, I'm going to force my desires and my understanding of how to get this done on God. David's reaction was like, that's not going to stand. Goliath cannot challenge our God. He will deliver me in this trial. And let's look at Jonathan and see which one he aligns to. So kind of going back to the offering, this passage, we're going back to 1 Samuel here. Can kind of hopping back and forth. This is around the time of the offering situation that Saul gets in trouble for. But this is 1 Samuel 13:3. Jonathan attacked the Philistine outpost at Geba, and the Philistines heard about it. Then Saul had the trumpet blown all throughout the land and said, let the Hebrews hear. So all Israel heard the news. Saul has attacked the Philistine outpost, and now Israel has become obnoxious to the Philistines. And the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. This is a good victory, by the way. That's just what that's saying. He attacked, was dominant, great win. However, the Philistines were not psyched, as it were. So in 5, the Philistines assembled to fight Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, and soldiers numerous as the sand on the seashore. They went up and camped at Michmash, east of Bethaven. When the Israelites saw their situation was critical and their army was hard-pressed, they hid in caves and thickets among the rocks and in pits and cisterns. Again, you're kind of seeing, what's your reaction? Like, what's your reaction when confronted with trial here? A lot of it, and it's very normal. Again, I'm not being critical. I'd be the first guy in the cave. I promise you. I would be out. But that's what happened, right? They're seeing a massive opposing force. It's incredible. And everybody just knows the Goliath and David the Goliath story. Everybody knows that story. I'd venture to guess not a lot of people are super familiar with this story. And so you're Israel, and again, this is a little earlier. This is before a lot of big victories. And Saul's sitting there kind of just waiting and figuring out what he's going to do. He ends up making the bad offering. But that's not Jonathan's approach. Jonathan sees a Philistine standing in opposition to the one living God, similar to David. And in 1 Samuel 14, still just after 13, we're picking up. Jonathan said to the young man who carried his armor, come, let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. It may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few. It's a strong parallel to Jonathan's reaction here and David's reaction later in the book of Samuel when he takes down Goliath. Very similar. They're looking at Impossible odds, just impossible odds. And they're saying, I'm not worried about that because this story isn't about me. It's about God, and I fit into that if I have faith in God. And so I'm not going to read this whole bit because it goes on a little bit, but this is how it shakes out. Again, go back and read it. This is your homework for the week. Read a little bit of 1 Samuel. They come up with a plan, he and his armor bearer, just the two of them. They don't even tell Saul. They're just like, we're just going to go take this. And they scale a mountain, like a rocky mountain. One's named Slippery, one's named they scale a mountain, and they come up with this plan. It's basically like, all right, we'll go up there. If they call us over, then we know God is calling us to go take them out. If they don't, then we won't. Anyway, they go up there, and they do. The Philistines call them over, and they say, hey, Israel, look, the Israelites have emerged from their holes. Let's see what this is about. And then Jonathan just went John Wick on him, same Jonathan, and he killed 20 of them, straight up. And then an earthquake happened. And it's just chaos. So much chaos and panic ensued. The Philistines turned on each other. It was victory. It was a great victory for Israel. It was unbelievable. I mean, if you're thinking, David killed one man, one giant man, I get that. But Jonathan, he climbed a mountain to face an army and won. Again, with God. But you could see the faith that he's displaying early on before he even takes this approach. He is saying, again, this is what I just read, but in 14:6, 1 Samuel 14:6, it may be that the Lord will work for us, for nothing can hinder the Lord from saving by many or by few. Just saying, I'm not worried about it. God's going to do what God's going to do. It's great. Again, it's one thing to understand. It's another thing to have faith. Ideally, we understand and have faith. So we're going to re-merge the story here with all three characters. So Saul, David, and Jonathan. And this is in the immediate aftermath of David slaying Goliath. And it says in 1 Samuel 18, as soon as he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not let him return to his father's house. Then Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of his robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. That, again, you can see the three characters here. Jonathan, this movie, Wedding Crashers, and it's a very silly movie, but in the beginning they're talking about toasting at a wedding, and Owen Wilson's character says something like, he's giving advice to this other character. He's like, that's a terrible toast. Don't say that. Like, this is what you should say is, true love is your soul's recognition of his counterpart in another. That's the line in this movie. And that's all fine and well if you're looking at it from a secular view, but I think as Christians, the recognition of your counterpart as another is the bought in to God's purpose in your life. Like as Christians, like whether you like the Cowboys or the Packers, whether you like Chinese food or Indian food, whatever, like all that stuff is trivial in light of the fact that we are redeemed through the sacrifice of Jesus. So when you see another Christian, like you are knit together, you potentially could be knit together by the convictions you share in that simple fact and that simple truth. And so what Jonathan is doing is he's immediately recognizing you are that man after God's own heart. It was prescribed by Samuel earlier in this book. Like, I'm here for that. I recognize that you're appointed and you're the king and that's your will. And I don't think we could stay on this point long enough because Jonathan is the son of the actual king. Have you read any part of English history ever? Google English history. There are 0 times when a prince was like, listen, I think you're a better king than me. No, they killed each other in mass for like 1,000 years for just to hold on to the throne. So this is an extraordinarily unique thing happening in the course of human history. This does not happen. In fact, if you were Jonathan, like think of modern day politics in America. How much faith do you have in people in Washington D.C.? Just real talk. Like, how do you think if they have the option to get more power or less power? Let's just take a quick poll. No. Right? You kind of get how that might unfold. That is not what you're seeing here. And in fact, you're not seeing any conniving from Jonathan at all. You're saying like, hey, I recognize you're moving. You are the future of Israel. God has appointed you, and you fall into his will. And he immediately folds into that, and their souls become bound together in a covenant relationship. The story kind of goes on. We're going to get out of 1 Samuel here in a second, but the story goes on. Saul does not take the approach I just described, Jonathan. Saul saw David as a problem, and he so begins the episode of Saul trying to kill David, and David not killing Saul, which again is wild. There's a couple opportunities David could have killed Saul, and he chose not to. But so begins the passage where Jonathan and David are unified in their commitment to seeing God's will be done in Israel and through the world. And so in 1 Samuel 20, again, this is Saul's trying to kill David. He's been trying to kill David for a while. 1 Samuel 20. I should probably some context here. So David's pretty worried that Saul's going to kill him. He says, hey, we have dinner tonight, family dinner. I'm supposed to be there. Why don't you just go ahead and feel it out? See what your dad does. See how he reacts if I'm not there. And if he seems like he wants to kill me, just, give me a sign, and I'll be out of here. And that's pretty much what happens. So he's not at dinner. This is 1 Samuel 20, 30. Then Saul's anger was kindled against Jonathan. And he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman. It's a modern equivalent. Do I not know that you have chosen a son, the son of Jesse, to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on earth, neither you nor your kingdom shall be established. Which again, that is the typical expectation. You would imagine somebody would take that position, but that's not Jonathan's take. Therefore, send and bring him to me, for he shall surely die. Then Jonathan answered Saul, his father, why should he be put to death? What has he done? But Saul hurled a spear at him to strike him down. So Jonathan knew that his father was determined to put David to death. Yeah, if somebody throws a spear at you, he's going to kill you, or David, or anybody he sees next. And this, in fact, is, again, I can't remember if I brought this up earlier, but this is the second time Saul has almost killed Jonathan, his own son. Earlier, I mentioned that Saul, as Jonathan was busy actually delivering victory and taking out the Philistines, Saul made this proclamation that people should be fasting and they should not eat until the evening before victory is granted to Israel. And Jonathan did not hear that because he was busy just wrecking shop. And so when he came back, he found he had honey on the way back home. So he had not participated in the fast. He had broken the fast. And it was this very awkward situation where Saul was maybe going to kill him, but there was people standing there, and he was delivered from it. But he had to justify. He kind of had a little bit of a tense exchange with his father, like, you're going to kill me for what, And again, it's such an awkward situation because Jonathan had done what God had called him to do. He had been faithful, he exercised faith, and he had gone out in defense of the living God and been used by God to deliver his will. Whereas Saul had been sitting there, making up things, trying to apply his own logic to the situation. So that was one time. And now he just threw a spear at Jonathan. So if my dad tried to kill me twice, I wouldn't be a third. I'd be out. But you just see again and again, Jonathan has all these opportunities to try and reclaim or try and Game of Thrones it, try and politic it a little bit for his own end. But that's just never something he does. And in fact, he stays loyal to his dad throughout too. Like he's at equal parts, he is committed to the usage of David at the will of God as the anointed future king of Israel. But he's also faithful to his dad throughout. And in fact, Jonathan ends up going into battle and dying alongside his dad in battle. I mean, he ended up ultimately living a sacrificial life that resulted in his death. He gave up his life for his friends, which sounds like somebody in the New Testament. And Jonathan is just such a great example of what it is to be down for something bigger than yourself. So relationships that work long-term have to be knit together, have to be unified by something bigger than convenience, bigger than something temporary. Even at work, right? I've had different jobs. I'm sure you guys have had different jobs. You've been to different places. You've moved, a lot of military. How many of those friends have you kept throughout, right? Like I don't like, you're just friends of convenience. There's not friends of great substance necessarily. It's less common. Because again, are those covenant relationships? Are they relationships of convenience? So we're going to hop into Hebrews 3. So we just kind of finished the example in the Old Testament. In Hebrews 3, this is Hebrews 3:7. Therefore, as the Holy Spirit says, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion, on the day of your testing in the wilderness, where your fathers put me to the test and saw my works for 40 years. Therefore, I was provoked with that generation and said, they always go astray in their heart. They have not known my ways. As I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Take care, brothers, lest there be take care, my brothers, lest there be in any of you an evil, unbelieving heart, leading you to fall away from the living God. But exhort one another every day, as long as it's called today, that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. For we have come to share in Christ, if indeed we hold to our original confidence firm to the end. As it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. This is it. This is a center point. This is how the functional piece of how relationships work well, relationships with other believers. You have to be in covenant relationship with each other where you're exhorting each other daily because of the deceitfulness of sin. I tell my girls this sometimes. I recognize, and I don't like, but I recognize that my children will probably lie to me at some point. They lie to me all the time, though, just so I'm clear. And I always tell them, like, listen, I accept that I will be lied to by you at times. I accept that. We'll talk about it. We'll figure that out. But what I will not accept is you to lie to yourself. And sin is such an easy path to allow that ends up consuming you. And it's critical that you have relationships that hold up themselves as a mirror to you, to be able to live in reality. Like, come join us in reality. All those calls from the second date update, those people don't have friends in their lives who are like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but you have a terrible sense of humor. All right, whatever it is, you know? And it's just critical to have functioning relationships. You have to be in covenant relationships with other believers who are unified in something bigger than themselves. And I don't know if you golf. Any golfers? I golfed on Friday. A few, okay. I golfed on Friday, so naturally I haven't been able to walk all weekend because strenuous exercise. Terrible. But this is so. In your mind, I promise you, if we were at a golf range right now, for a driving range, and you picked up a club, in your mind, you look like Tiger Woods, all of you, every single one of us. Like I pick up a swing, I'm going to do exactly. I've seen golfers. How hard could it be? It's exactly like you. It probably doesn't go well. It's like, let me take a video. Let me show you what you're doing, you know? You record it, and you show it to them, and like, are you kidding me? That's what I look like? I'm never picking up a golf club again. This is a disaster. It is so humbling. Like, it's hard. It's hard to watch. However, if you know this, and if you're good at golf, that is a necessary function of actually getting good. Because how can you improve if you don't realize it? How can you improve if you haven't seen it? I was in college. I did Campus Crusade in college, and I was president of Campus Crusade in college, San Diego State. Like, it probably appeared like I was, on a path and living in an upright fashion. It probably appeared that way, almost like how Saul would have appeared to Israelites. And I had this coffee appointment with a staff member of Campus Crusade. His name was Reed Zeller. Good guy. We actually ended up going on a summer project to Australia a little bit after this. And Reed, I just want to clear, Reed did not have to talk to me. He did not have to have the conversation he did with me. But we were just talking. I don't remember a lot about it. It was just a lot of honesty. It was a lot of just loving honesty. But I remember one of the things he said to me, because he was trying to get me to see past my nose a little bit. He was trying to get me to see the sin in my own life. And he asked me a question I think about all the time. He was like, hey, can you go today without sinning? And I really thought about it. I was like, yeah, hang on a second. Let me think. What time? It's 11 o'clock. 4 is 9. Yeah, I could probably squeak out the next little bit without sinning. And like, he laughed out loud for a while. And what? Like, and he framed it up as like, you can't, man. You can't. You know why? Because you're a duck. And ducks are ducks. That's what they are. Like, ducks fly. Is anybody surprised when ducks fly? You're a sinner, man. Like, that's a condition. You need to dwell on that idea that it is a condition. The sin is a manifestation, the actions of that condition, but it is sourced from a condition that emerged in the Garden of Eden. Like, you need to hold on to that, embrace that. Total depravity is an essential component of faith. And I think about that all the time, and it offers a lot of liberation. It offers a lot to kind of dwell on, but it is critical that that's recognized in the mind of a believer, that it's not so much like me holding up an expectation and me trying to do my best, me applying my own understanding to a situation like Saul or like some of the characters in the Old Testament, like us. It is essential that I have parameters and boundaries and people in my life who will be honest with me because of this condition. I recognize it as a condition. Like, for instance, if you get an illness and it could be reoccurring, what do? You have regular scheduled checkups with a doctor, right? That's what happens. That's what you'd expect. we all have a condition called sin. Why wouldn't you have regular checkups with a doctor? Those doctors are other covenant relationships with Christians. And back to golf for a second. Like, I was a decent golfer at one point in my life. Those days are gone. Very, very long gone. But I was okay. I thought I was better than I was. That's the truth. I worked on a golf course in high school. I definitely thought I was better than I was. And then I went to college, and in college I worked at a store called Golfsmith, which is now Golf Galaxy, which is a big store that sells golf clubs. And I didn't realize that I was just stupid. It's stupid because I see my scores. I like shoot a 90. Like, that's not, pros shoot like in the 60s. Like, we're far apart. We were playing a different game. But I thought, like, I'm better than other people, so I can't be that bad. And then you actually meet people that are like real people that are better than you. And I met a lot of people that are really better than me. And if you want to get good at golf, or anything, but in this example, golf, you know what you do? It's pretty simple. You golf with those golfers. That's it, honestly. That's all you do. Like, you practice and you do all those things, but there's something about immersing yourself in a culture of expectation that other people are committed to that allows for you to become transformed by the expectation in your mind that, hey, this is how it's done. This is how it's done. That's actually how you get good at golf, or, again, anything. So I'm trying to, I think the application here is pretty simple. It is very easy to get off track, and it's very easy to seek your own ends. It's very easy to want to be a consumer in relationships rather than a seeker of God's will through relationships. And the best way to do this is in small groups, or life groups, or whatever we call them. I don't know. Whatever we're calling them. Groups of like-minded Christians who are in covenant relationships. I've had the fortune, brother of ours goes this year, Alex started this group earlier this year, and we met at Cracker Barrel, and it was like almost like a covenant relationship. Like, it was like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Are you in or are you out? And it's been the best Bible study of my life. Like, hands down, we meet every Saturday super early because it's an older bunch. It's okay. That's all right. They're early risers, and I just got to set my alarm. That's fine. That's good. But I can't tell you how impactful this group has been to me because it started on the foundation of a covenant relationship with other men. And I didn't really know them before. I knew Alex, but these men have come to change my life already. I can't imagine how much more God, I mean, it's amazing how that's working. And so each one of us needs to be in these small communities. And I don't know what that looks like. We're working on small groups here at Compass. You'll hear more and more about this over the coming year. A small group is an essential piece of this. And listen, if Jesus is the most important thing in your life, count up the hours in the week. How many hours are we actually asking for? You know, like, really. Like, if you're a Cowboy fan, do you tell anybody you're a Cowboy fan? If you do CrossFit, you tell everybody you do CrossFit. Like, everybody knows, right? Like, but Christian's like, well, listen, I was going to go to church, but I was busy, and, you know, we had things going on. It's not that many hours a week. It's really, that's just the base, that's the benchmark. If you want to golf with good golfers, join us. Let's play some golf. Let's get better together. And so I'm going to end with not a biblical thought here, but like it's interesting because I think God's so real and evident that even secular people pick up on the realities of God, which blows my mind. You go to church and you miss a lot of the things God is saying to us. And even people who've never been to church recognize the reality of God. And so there's this Indian Native American chief. His name is Tecumseh. He was kind of like Illinois area back in the day. This was like the westward expansion of America. Very famous Indian chief, warrior chief. And he has this quote. It's really good. It says, "When it comes your time to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with the fear of death, so that when their time comes, they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home." Tecumseh was not a Christian. He was traditional Native American. But he recognized the reality of, like, you live for something or you live for nothing. And as Christians, you live for one thing and one thing only, a totally consuming reality that Jesus died for you to reconcile you to God the Father. That's it. That's the entire point. And the best place to see that, to become alive in Christ, is to have covenant relationships with other believers in a small group, in a corporate environment. So, Lord, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for the realities of your word, the truth of your sacrifice. We ask that our hearts would be moved, that connections and relationships and covenants would be formed, and that revival would spread throughout Helotes, San Antonio, as your will would have. So Lord, we thank you again. In your name we pray. Amen.